Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming back to view this channel. Thank you very much for keeping this channel going. Today I want to talk about white Americans and the claim that they're afraid of black people. Whenever something comes up about black people and white people, somebody invariably is going to say something about white people being afraid of black people. And I think a lot of black people think like me. Afraid of what? We're the ones that ought to be afraid. We're the ones that see our family members or other black people shot down in the streets for nothing. We're the ones that have been subjected to slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and the peonage system and discrimination. And now, when black women came out with a program to help other black women get on their feet, now they've gone after that program and saying it's discriminating against everybody else. They've been discriminating against us from the beginning. But once something is created to help black people, then they go after that and claim it's discriminating against white people. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't know who it does make sense to. But it always comes up that, oh, they're afraid of black people. We know they're not physically afraid of us. But the fear, in my opinion, is fear of competition. And it's the fear of having all of these lies that have been told dispelled. Yeah, it's fear, all right. Fear of having the history of this country taught so that their children know how this country came about, what was done to black people and indigenous people for them to be on top. So yeah, they're afraid. They are afraid of the obvious. They are afraid of the world finding out who they are. But here is a white woman speaking in her own words about their fear and why racism is perpetuated in this country.
There was a real fear that if you let blacks get control, everything would change. With some people, there was no idea that there would be any fairness or any democracy or anything decent, well-run city government, county government, whatever. It was like, if this happens, we're lost. And it was just a terrible fear. Politicians, even people who knew better, would have been willing to go further personally or to have the state move forward, were always bound by fear of not getting reelected. And so really, people who knew better just stuck with racism for political reasons, is what I think. But a lot of it, just in average citizens, was just that people didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to help.
Now, we all know that politicians and preachers can be some of the most dangerous, destructive people in a society because they are people with power. And if that power is not used for the right reasons, then that power will be turned against the people. And that has happened in America to keep black and white people divided. Every time it seems like people are going to start working together and finding a way to work together, the politicians will come up with another reason to divide the people. Whether it's busing, whether it's crime, whether it's blockbusting in the neighborhood, segregation is what they do. They preach segregation. That is the best, most effective way in America to keep black people and white people at odds with each other and keep politicians elected and going back to Washington knowing full well they're not going to do anything to help the people when they get there, but they come back to their home base and come up with some kind of divisive tactic to keep people divided. Here's an interesting piece of research. Study finds anti-black bias among white Americans is rooted in perceived threat, not dislike. I beg to differ. New research published in the Journal of Personality and social psychology sheds light on one of the underlying reasons behind anti-black bias among white Americans. The research, conducted across 5 studies, reveals that this bias is in part driven by the perception of black men as a threat. Wow. These findings supplement previous assumptions about racial bias and highlight the importance of understanding the nuances of how individuals unconsciously perceive different racial groups. Well, all I got to say about this is that white men have been more of a threat to black men than black men have been to white men. This is bogus and it's nonsense. These people are mean and hateful because they want to be. Recent events have underscored the devastating consequences of anti-black bias, particularly in encounters with law enforcement. Studies have shown that police apply force against black individuals at disproportionately higher rates than against other racial groups. In lab studies, when tasked with decisions like whether to shoot, white participants tend to make quicker decisions to shoot armed targets and slower decisions not to shoot unarmed targets when those targets are black. I don't know what kind of propaganda this is supposed to be, but they will shoot unarmed black people faster than they will anybody. This bias extends even to black participants themselves. But is this bias solely due to a stronger dislike of black individuals than other racial groups? What they're saying is that even when the police officers are black, they will shoot the black person more often than the other groups. And they're asking, is that due to racial bias? No, it's due to their indoctrination. Black police officers know that they will lose their jobs more quickly if they shoot another race of people than if they shoot a black person, because a black man is seen as more of a threat than any other race of man. As recent events have highlighted, the consequences of anti-black bias can be deadly, explained study author David S. March, an assistant professor of psychology at Florida State University. The typical approach to prejudice, as balanced bad versus good evaluations, implies that negative evaluations of black Americans is the problem and redressing the unfavorable attitude is the solution. Yeah, it is the solution. Redressing the unfavorable attitude that law enforcement has against black people. There is no explaining away of this behavior. So now it seems like they're coming up with some kind of BS about, oh, they just feel so threatened by black people. They're just so afraid of black people. This is just another form of propaganda. These people are not afraid of black people. It goes back to what the white woman said. This racism is based on the fact that they are afraid that they're not going to get reelected to something, or they're not going to get a job, or that they are going to somehow have to compete with black people and lose. That's what the fear is. They're not afraid of black people doing anything to them. Black people are afraid of them doing something to us. The chances of them doing something to us is greater than us doing something to them. They are afraid to compete. That's what it comes down to. And they just need to be upfront and open about this. And the American society is built on them not having to compete with black people. And they don't want to compete with black people because they're afraid if they do, they will lose. That is the fear. And so they might as well stop trying to dress it up and making it into anything greater than that. The fear is of competition and losing to people that they claimed and wanted to believe that they were superior to. That's what it is in a nutshell. That's what I think, but let me know what you think. Thank you for listening and have a good evening.